Tell us about big guys on 4chan and their consequences.
All right, thank you very much. I'm really excited today to talk to you a little bit about our work on 4chan. This is the first time I give this talk publicly, so the paper is going to be presented in a couple of weeks, well, more than a couple of weeks, in May in Montreal at ICWSM. We're going to essentially present a measurement study about 4chan and in particular one of its boards. So before I kind of dive into the details, I'd like to ask how many people know about 4chan, have heard about 4chan, maybe actually been on the website, posted something on the website? All right, so very quickly. So essentially, 4chan is a website that revolves around a typical balloting board mechanism. Actually, to be more precise, an image board. So it's sort of like a forum, and it has a very bare interface, no threads. It's quite old. It was designed in 2003 by Christopher Poole, known at the time as Moot. He sold it a couple of years ago, and now works at Google. So the idea is that you create a new thread, just like in a forum, by making a post, and the post has an image and some text attached to it. Right? So the user who creates the thread is called original poster in 4chan's terminology. And so once you have a thread, then other users can reply to it, so can add images, text, and there is some mechanisms kind of to reply to specific posts, quotes on text, and so on. Right. So the site is organized into boards, and the boards sort of serve as a separation of conversation into topics of interest. So at the moment there are 69 boards organized in 7 categories. So like Japanese culture, for instance, is an example of one such category. It has 9 boards. And so we, in our work, we particularly focused on POL, the politically incorrect board, which essentially allows generally distasteful content, even by 4chan standards, to be discussed in such a way that there is minimal disruption to other boards. Okay, so and now this is a good time to sort of make a huge trigger warning. So this is going to be content in my slides that might be offensive, racist, and of course does not represent my views, but that of 4chan users. So you find a lot of sort of terminology in posts that subscribe to rhetoric of hate and racism, and more recently, alt-right and ultra-conservatism. Okay, so I apologize in advance. All right, so there are a couple of things that make 4chan a bit interesting, in my opinion, compared to other social media platform or even other sort of forum-like sites like Reddit, for instance. So the first one is anonymity, in the sense that there is actually no sort of account mechanism on 4chan. Everybody can get on the site and read threads, but you don't even need an account to post. Okay, so you have to solve a CAPTCHA. But other than that, anybody can post, so there is, all posts are anonymous, right? So anonymity is really the default and preferred behavior. And of course, for computer science people, anonymity here is intended with respect to other users and not, the website operator that can, of course, see potentially identifiable information like IP addresses or other information. So there is some extra sort of features that users can use to kind of link different posts, but for the interest of time, I'm going to skip this part because it's not super relevant. So anonymity is really anonymous posting is the default behavior. So the other aspect is ephemerality. So there are two main systems, two main mechanisms on 4chan, so that essentially a thread has a limited lifetime. So that this essentially guarantees that new content, new discussion is always coming up on the site. Okay, so each of these 69 boards has a limit on how many active threads there can be on that board. And so once a new thread comes along, the thread with the oldest last post is pruned, so it's kind of archived. Okay. Of course, this means that if there is a thread that is very active, very popular, this will always be renewed, and it might never get pruned. But there is this bumping mechanism, so a thread can only be bumped a certain number of times. There is this number of times depends on the board and depends on whether or not posts have images attached to it. But anyway, so the idea is that at some point the threads will die. Okay, so essentially at first the thread is archived. So for 7 days you can read the content of the thread. But you cannot post to it, and after 7 days, the threads are actually deleted from the website. And this actually kind of creates some obstacles for us to collect data, but I'll tell you how we solve that. All right, then another potentially interesting feature is that on some boards on 4chan, you see a little flag. I have some screenshots of some examples. So you see a little flag that depicts the country of the user that posted that content. And so this is actually not on all boards, but it is in the boards that we're going to study in our work. And of course, these flags are based on IP geolocation, so they might be fooled by users that use Tor or VPNs or proxies. Although actually 4chan is pretty good at preventing users from posting from Tor. So it actually has a blacklist of Tor exit nodes and also known free VPNs and proxies. So you can access the site, but you cannot post from Tor. Anyway, so the idea is really to, especially on Tor, which has very politically sort of content, the idea is that this might create some interesting discussion or reduce the ability of users to troll other users by pretending to be from a country from which a certain event is happening or something like that. Okay, so here are some examples of poll threads. We collected this in summer 2016, so kind of at the height of the outlandish 2016 presidential campaign in the US. So as you can see, this original post up there is an image of Bernie Sanders, and then there are some replies with, this is an example of the use of derogatory word "cuck," very frequent in 4chan lingo. And then the thread continues. There are other posts that reply to one of these threads. Sorry, one of the other posts. Okay. Here is another example with a casual call for genocide with an image of woman's cleavage and some sort of humorous response. Here, Donald Trump makes an appearance. Again, you can already see sort of hate words and racism. And here is an example of one of the memes that 4chan like a lot. So this is Kek, the god of memes, via which actually 4chan people believe they influence reality somehow. All right, so why do we care about 4chan, right? So I hope that for those of you who don't really know about 4chan, you can already see that there is a lot of crazy stuff going on there. Well, so one reason, and probably the main reason we started working on this project, so we're actually funded by the EU to study cyberbullying and cyber harassment. And 4chan is actually a place that plays an important role in making, sort of coordinating cyber aggression and cyberbullying. So here is an example. So Leslie Jones was sort of forced off Twitter as she was bullied by 4chan people. So there was a coordinated attack against her. And especially on poll, they actually 4chan played an important role in the presidential campaign in 2016 with sort of giving a voice to alt-right content, Breitbart, and so on, and creating memes that even Donald Trump retweeted. Right? So this is a famous tweet I think it's June 2016. They also gave voice to controversy and sort of conspiracy theories like Pizzagate or Gamergate. So I'm happy to talk offline about those. And in general, really, I mean, they give a voice to organizations like Anonymous and so on. So we believe that, you know, 4chan and particular Paul is an interesting place to study with respect to these issues. I mean, this is even very recent, so apparently there's some post written the day before the London terror attack on Westminster Bridge, where it seems to predict exactly what happens. And I haven't followed this through, so I'm not sure whether or not this is actually true. But of course, not everybody agrees. So, you know, for instance, they told us that 4chan is niche and irrelevant, so of course, everybody has their view. All right, so in terms of academic work, well, there's not much. So lots of media coverage, especially, as I said, with the presidential campaign. There is one paper at ICWSM 2011 that has a simple sort of preliminary study of B, the random board. But you can find, of course, you know, and probably you guys know more than me, other work that looks at the effect of anonymity and ephemerality on social media and, you know, probably on the social science side of the community, there is much more work. Okay. All right, so now I'd like to start presenting some of our results. I have a number of plots and numbers to show, and if I go too fast or you'd like me to give a little bit more details, please stop me any time and do ask questions. So I'll start with sort of the methodology and the data that we collect. So our study is going to be based on a crawl of 4chan, which we did in summer 2016, as I said, June 30 to September 12. We used the 4chan JSON API. And so as I mentioned, the methodology, we need to come up with sort of a smart methodology to collect data, since, you know, threads are archived and then deleted from 4chan. So what we do, we have a crawler that every 5 minutes takes a snapshot of 3 boards, Poll, Sports, and International, and essentially looks at all threads on those boards that are active on those boards. Okay? Once a thread is archived, then we know that no further posts can be made on that thread. So we can go to the archive and crawl, collect all posts that have been made to that thread. Okay, so we are pretty sure we can retrieve the full contents of all these threads. Okay. So overall, we collect in this 2.5 months, we collect a few 100,000 threads, and that corresponds to a few million posts. As you can see, Poll is much more active than sports and international. So we don't really study the sports and the international board. We sort of use them as a measuring stick, so to compare against Poll. So I also want to add that our crawler is still active actually, and if I'm not mistaken, we are collecting data from other boards as well. So if anyone has some ideas, some things you like to study, please do get in touch. We can talk about how to use this data. Okay, so the first thing that we do, as is common with this sort of measurement papers, is to do a general characterization, right? So try to understand what is the posting activity, what people do on these websites. So the very first plot I like to show is the average number of new threads. So how active these boards are per hour of the week. So if I'm not mistaken, we start. This is like hour 0 is Sunday, midnight Sunday GMT. So we observe sort of a peak around Saturday, right? We can see that the green line, Poll, we see it is much more active than the other boards. So we can see this sort of seasonality, right, in posting activity, which somewhat corresponds to European and North American users being awake, right? More or less. So next we look at this post per country, and we do that using these flags that are displayed on 4chan. So actually, so this is a heat map. So the darker the color, the more sort of threads are created per country. But we do it normalized by the number of internet active users per country. Right? So there are statistics you can find, I think, from the UN and other places. So actually, we see North America and Europe is pretty dark, but actually the top 5 countries are New Zealand, Canada, Ireland, Finland, and Australia. So those are our top 5. So Canada is pretty interesting, right? There's apologize for Letitia, but Letitia is a Canadian, they're very nice, and they always apologize. But in our study, it shows that there's a lot of actually content coming from them. I'll show you more data in a second. As I said, you find North America, like US, you can really see the difference between Canada and US, but so US is top 10, but not top 5. Right, so next we look at the number of posts per thread to see, how distributed, well distributed. So whether there are some threads that really dominate the conversation. So there is some very popular threads, and some threads that are not really active, and that's pretty much what we observe. We plot both the CDF and the complementary CDF. Yes, the complementary CDF. So we see that the average length of sports threads is a bit longer, and the idea is that actually on the sport board, people actually sort of do a live commentary of some sporting events. So you find a lot of threads having fewer threads, but with a lot of activity concentrated around a certain time. But anyway, so you can see that there is the bump limit is evident on all 3 boards. So after a while, things die down. So threads are archived. Okay, but more or less, we see that around like 50% of threads have just a few posts, like 10 or so. So there is a lot of threads, there's a lot of active, and then some stuff gets discussed much more. Alright, so then after sort of general characterization, there is more results on the paper. We look at the content. What do 4chan users post? Okay? So huge trigger warning here. It's going to be some pretty offensive stuff, unfortunately. So the idea is that not to look only at the text, but also the media, so like images, right? So lots of stuff originates from 4chan, a lot of memes, a lot of sort of, like newer content comes from 4chan, but we also kind of do some, maybe less intuitive sort of analysis, do some sort of geopolitical clustering. And the idea is to use some basic text classification, aiming to evaluate whether or not different parts of the world talk about similar things on 4chan. This is sort of standard NLP-based techniques. You remove stop words, perform stemming, and use DF-IDF to extract topics. Right, so the first thing that we do actually is a URL characterization. So there's a lot of links. We observed that the overwhelming majority of 4chan threads have a high number of links. So users post links to different sites. So what we do, we extract these URLs and we characterize them using some, I think, McAfee service that tells us, this URL corresponds to a streaming media website or a media sharing website and so on. And we also evaluate the popularity of that URL, so the popularity of that domain, right? And then we do that using Alexa ranking. Okay, so in this plot we have both, right? So we see that an overwhelming majority of links on 4chan point to streaming media or media sharing websites, with YouTube actually being the predominant domain. And so you can see, there's a lot of white in here because a lot of these domains are top 10 Alexa domains. Like YouTube is a top 10 Alexa domain, right? Probably #1 popular website. So then we actually look a little bit more in details about like news and blogs. So we don't find a lot of popular domains about news. So you would expect a lot of links to be to how do you say sort of mainstream news outlets. That's not really the case. So we don't find a lot of links to CNN or BBC, but we find a lot of links to unfortunately Daily Mail and crazy stuff like Infowars, Breitbart News. So we do see this sort of outright connotation about this. Next thing we do is actually to see sort of how many images are repeated across the boards. So how much content, how much like media content is new. And this is actually something that that we find that we did expect. So a lot of, as I said, 4chan users are really much into memes, and they spend a lot of time doing this sort of Photoshop, photo collages of some frog with Donald Trump face and so on. So we do see that a lot of images are only posted once. So they're not reused, they're not, most of the time they're not taken from the internet. They're actually users that spend time creating those images. As I said, photoshopping things around. So if I'm not mistaken, if I see this well, I think about 70% of images are posted only once. Right. So actually in the extended version of our paper, we also plot a few sort of examples of images. So for instance, I don't know if you've seen this Pepe the Frog. There's a meme that originated from 4chan. So 4chan, they use it a lot. They put some, they do some photo collage and Photoshop. The example of the Donald Trump tweet was Pepe the Frog with Donald Trump's hair. So this was the least rare Pepe. So the most popular Pepe the Frog image appeared, multiple times. So 4chan people actually found our paper and they have an interesting commentary on 4chan. And anyway, so this even made it to knowyourmeme.com. I don't know if you've ever seen this website that talks about Pepe the Frog and shows this is empirically proven that this is the least rare paper. So this is a screenshot from our paper. Impact. All right, so next, so here are some other examples I want to show. This is like Julian Assange, leaking the DNC stuff. Some stuff about CNN. So this is the sort of things that you find people, do spend time, making these images up. Right? This is Hillary Clinton. This is, some stuff about, Donald Trump victory and the rise of ultra-Nazi people after the election and so on. Right, then we actually look at content in terms of text. And so what we do, we use a dictionary of hate words. So there's a dictionary that we got from, it's called hate-based dictionary. So I apologize truly about these words. So we look at the percentage of posts on poll that contain hate words. Right? So these are the top 15. And as you can see, some are very fancy. And so the N-word actually appears in 2.2% of all posts. So that's a pretty impressive percentage, right? So this one word appears, in 2% of posts. So that's very high. But you can see, other stuff. So then next we do what I told you before, this kind of geopolitical clustering. So we extract topics using NLP style NLP techniques like GFIDF, and then we cluster them together based on countries. right? So, I mean, our data set, as I mentioned, is summer 2016, so it's the height of the presidential campaign. So as you can see, Trump dominates a lot of the topics. There's a lot of hate speech as well. As you can see, you see these clusters with Europe and North America being clustered together. You see Russia with the Balkans. You see South and Central America. You see a little bit, Australia and New Zealand. So there's some interesting sort of aspects in this setting. So as you can see, topics are really somewhat overlapping in terms of like Trump and some of the hate speech, but you can see other sort of stuff about Russia and Putin in other countries. We also look at sort of how hateful each country is on 4chan, and so this is kind of like a score that is based on a percentage of posts with hate speech per country. Again, normalized it's normalized. As you can see, China has the sort of highest percentage of posts with hate speech. Again, we don't have ground truth as to whether users are actually posting from China, or maybe they're using some proxies or VPNs. It's not that easy, as I said, because the known free VPNs and Tor are blocked, but there's obviously paid premium services that allow you to do that. And kind of, I found it, as I said, maybe a little bit interesting that Canada has more hate than US, and this is actually something that is well known on 4chan. So this is kind of a popular meme about Canada, right? So apparently this is something that goes on a lot on 4chan. So finally, one last sort of set of results I want to present is about grades. Okay, so there's, first of all, let me try and define a raid, because there's obviously many different sort of connotations to this word. So we define a raid as an attempt to disrupt another site. But I don't mean disruption from, let's say, a network point of view. So this is not distributed denial service, although 4chan in the past has been found to play a role to sort of coordinate distributed denial service attacks against other sites. But here is really, we focus on disrupting the service from a community point of view, right? So let's say disrupting, like going and raiding certain users or certain communities on Twitter by, for instance, hijacking a hashtag or dominating comments on a YouTube video of some specific targets, or, as I said, specific communities. And we experienced that firsthand. Somehow 4chan people found our paper, and then found some of our videos on YouTube, and I think what Jeremiah and over here were offended on these videos. All right, so we actually on the paper we have sort of a case study. I'm going to really just say a few words here for the interest of time about what's called Operation Google. It was something that started again summer 2016, and the idea is that 4chan got wind that services like Google, Twitter, and Facebook were deploying some artificial intelligence, some automated methods to filter out hate speech and block people. So they said they had this kind of brilliant idea of replacing some of the hate words with names of companies like Google and Skype. Okay. So this, they took it at heart to try to find to fight this. So they have a history of sort of fighting what they perceive to be censorship, and and to kind of promote hate speech on other platforms. I don't know if you remember Microsoft's attempt to have this AI bot TIE, and this sort of 4chan played a big role in teaching very quickly TIE to say bad things. Okay, So we studied this, so as I said, I don't have time to kind of give you the results, but the idea is that this sort of failed, right? So this didn't really play a major role in the disruption. But you know, I occasionally still see people using or Google or Skype. I think it's just a way to be leaked rather than actively disrupting these sort of services. So the thing that I said I do want to spend some time is the raids on YouTube videos. As I said, there's a lot of links that are posted on YouTube links that are posted on 4chan, and a lot of activity in the comments of YouTube videos that originate from 4chan users. Okay? So anecdotally, we observed some of these YouTube videos being raided, so being sort of flooded with hateful comments and hateful speech in general. So we like to try and see whether there is quantitative evidence of this sort of correlation between a link being posted on YouTube, or YouTube link being posted on 4chan and the comment sections being raided. Okay? So the idea is to look for YouTube videos posted to 4chan that experience a peak of activity. Right? So new comments being posted to that 4chan video, to that YouTube video, within the lifetime of the 4chan thread. Right? So remember, threads are archived after a number of posts. So if a peak is experienced, this might be an indication that 4chan users are rating the video. Okay? So this is at a very, very high level. Okay? So this is, for instance, like a simple way of displaying this, right? So we plot the distribution of the distance in a normalized lifetime of the highest peak of activity in YouTube comments and the thread they appear in. So time 0 here represents the time when the video was first mentioned in that 4chan thread. Okay, so this is, a few threads before, a few posts before, a few posts after. And we look at essentially how many comments that video experienced. Okay? So you can see already this kind of sort of a peak right after a link to a YouTube video is posted. You see more comments being posted on YouTube. Okay? So then we actually try to capture the synchronization between the threads and the corresponding YouTube comments. And we do that by focusing on hate speech, right? Or on text that is categorized as hateful. Okay. So, I don't want to spend too much time. I don't have too much time left. But so one thing that this picture shows is that essentially, as the rate of hateful comments on YouTube increases, so the more sort of offensive language you find on YouTube comments, the more, so you see a more synchronized activity between poll and the YouTube comments. Okay. So, again, this sort of shows a strong correlation, but of course, we cannot necessarily tell anything about causation. Okay? And so we go also one step forward, and we look at sort of the similarity of the similarity of the comments on YouTube. Okay, so there is a high correlation between the overlap, so the things that the fact that these topics that are being discussed might be very similar, and again the synchronization lag. So we see right after a link to a YouTube video is posted, we observe peak in similar hateful content being discussed in the comments of YouTube. All right, so this concludes my talk, and you can find more information, of course, on the paper, but also we have a kind of a blog post that discusses also how we sort of got rated ourselves after 4chan people found our paper and got some press coverage. And anyway, I also want to thank my co-authors. Two of them are here, Jeremiah and Gianluca, and I'll be really happy to answer any questions.